Hi, everybody. My name is Lily Kunda, and I am a second-year PhD student in the Department of Radio, Television, and Film. My research focuses on contemporary issues in Black popular culture. I'm generally just interested in the way that Blackness is constructed in the media, whether that be through music, television, film, and just in the ways that media has kind of aided in the oppression of Black Americans, but also how it can work as a tool to challenge normative thinking. So I will go ahead and share my screen so I can start my presentation. So my presentation, Burn It All Down, Target, Anti-Blackness, and the Myth of Progressive Capitalism. So in the summer of 2020, retailer Target found themselves in the middle of a race war as they became the site of protests, looting, and questions about what we as a society value more, people or things. This came right after Minneapolis became the center of mass hysteria as citizen protested the murder of 46-year-old George Floyd after 3 Minneapolis Police Department officers choked and killed Floyd after holding him down with a knee for over 8 minutes, all in an arrest gone wrong because he allegedly used a counterfeit $20 bill at a convenience store. As we all know, after this occurred, social media and news outlets got a hold of the video of the murder, and the city reacted with protests, which spread beyond Minneapolis. Target employees refused to sell milk to protesters, which was viewed as an act of not supporting the protests. And looting and ransacking of the Target began. So immediately after reports started rolling in that Target was destroyed, we saw in real time some of the usual responses that come as a result of looting. For example, Twitter user @MissPuerco tweeted, "Target was damaged and looting took place during the second night of demonstration in Minneapolis. I just don't understand why anyone would destroy something that had nothing to do with the situation. Maybe an excuse to steal." Or at Daniel Dem, who tweeted, "I'm all for protesting, but what does Target have to do with this?" Similarly, Fox News reported, looters also descended upon local Target stores, smashing windows, dismantling equipment, and taking what they could from inside. They were seen carrying merchandise from the store with no interference by police. Target is headquartered in Minneapolis, but was uninvolved in the death of 46-year-old Floyd. Looting has a long history of causing division on what is considered protest and what is considered harmful to the cause. However, this particular case and some of the response to a beloved Target being victim of destruction speaks to some larger themes on value, racial capitalism, and commodities. Target has earned themselves a positive reputation among consumers for being progressive, diverse, and trendy. However, I wish to take a broader view at Target being part of this racial reckoning and looting, and how looting has been a means for the oppressed to take action when they feel powerless in instances of police brutality and racial issues. Furthermore, I am very interested in the idea that Target and other looted corporations are uninvolved in instances of racial discrimination. Rather, I pose the argument that because capitalism is a driving force in systemic racism, Target and similar retailers are part of the problem that created a society that feels like it's okay for police officers to terrorize and kill men like George Floyd. So capitalism can be understood as an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production and their profit operation for profit. That's a lot of words. Capitalism in this nation is built upon the enslavement of African Americans who, during the era of slavery, Black Americans were viewed as capital and performed free labor for slaveholders who served as the capitalists. Furthermore, wealth is earned through the accumulation of surplus value. Scholar Sarah Benet Weiser tells us that Marx theorized surplus value as the accumulation of profit by corporations off the backs of laborers who see little to none of the profit and who themselves are considered surplus value. So if you think of this in relation to retailers like Target, capitalism is reproduced as Target being the owner of the means of production and all the people who work there as laborers. But we often don't think about it that way. I think more critique should be paid to the role retail corporations play in the systemic racism that persists as a result of capitalism. Due to having trendy products and an investment in diversity, Target often isn't targeted for their critiques of their ethics like other retail corporations are, such as Walmart, Amazon, and Nike. I argue that this is part of a phenomenon called commodity fetishism. So commodity fetishism is the idea that commodities that we consume are natural items that have inherent value with the labor that goes into making them, and the social conditions of that labor are obscured. Karl Marx introduced the concept of commodity fetishism, saying that essentially, when a normal object becomes a commodity, it takes on mysterious powers. He says that commodities become independent beings similar to that of a religious item. I take this to mean we as humans worship things the same way we worship gods. In his example, Marx uses a table being more than just put together wood, but instead representing more. For example, an ad for a table may pull on the heartstrings of the things we value in society, such as dinner with our family, a place to study, something to make your home nicer. But what is removed from the characteristics we give that table is the laborer who spent 15 hours chopping wood, sanding it, building the table for only $3.50 an hour. Basically, because we're more invested in the pleasure we get from purchasing a product, we forget about the labor and oppression that goes into making said product. While Marx focuses upon commodities and particular items, scholar Sarah Benet Weiser connects the concept of commodity fetishism to modern day brand culture. She states that even the theorizing of Marx and others is no longer adequate to describe the penetration of the material world into our inner lives. It is becoming more and more clear that brand culture shapes not only consumer habits, but also political, cultural, and civil practices. Commodities hardly stand alone anymore, as many are associated with particular brands. Brands signify things. Buying a shirt from Costco means something very different than buying a shirt from Michael Kors. In her book, Benet Weiser argues that because brands associate themselves with corporate social responsibility and other social justice oriented actions, that consumers tie caring about a cause with that brand. This is a phenomenon called commodity activism, the practice of merging consumer behavior with political or social goals. Individual consumers act politically by purchasing particular brands over others in the marketplace where specific brands are attached to political aims and goals. For example, as iPhone has like their product Red, which when you purchase it, they donate money to HIV/AIDS. So some people feel like when they purchase an item like that, iPhone Red, they're doing their part in social good by donating to HIV/AIDS. This concept is in line with commodity fetishism in that attaching political aims and goals to a commodity, again, is giving it mysterious powers. Weiser quotes Inger and Stoll, who say, the practice of cause marketing suggests that businesses may leverage the existence of dire social problems to improve their public image and profits while distracting attention from their connection as to why these social problems continue to exist in the first place. This is another layer of commodity fetishism in which we associate a cause with a commodity, but are not thinking about how that corporations create these problems. So I'm going to connect these concepts of commodity fetishism and commodity activism to Target. So if we go back to days after the ransacking of Lake Street Target, CEO Brian Cornell released a statement basically denouncing systemic racism. He names George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, and basically says he understands why communities were angered and protesting, which got them a lot of favorable views. What makes Target different from many other retailers is they make it an active effort to appeal to identity politics through diverse advertising and extensive corporate social responsibility efforts. This politically correct response is very much in line with their brand. Target excels in appealing to diverse audiences. Just from taking a quick look at their Instagram page, I can see their investment in diverse advertising. Their photos showcase Target shoppers of different sizes, races, even different abilities. And they've gotten much positive public attention for the fact that they go out of their way to be diverse. But I think about the way Target uses diverse bodies instead to further their brand. This practice can be worked into a concept known as racial capitalism. That is the commodification of non-whites for social and economic gain, and the process of getting some sort of social or economic benefit from somebody else's racial identity. Additionally, Target receives much good attention for their work in social corporate responsibility. According to Arthur Laura Rowe, since 1946, Target has given 5% of its pre-tax sales to charity. She argues that Target marries marketing and philanthropy in clever ways. Just by looking at Target's corporate responsibility webpage, we can see that they do work, they help build a better tomorrow through civic activity, community relations, diversity, inclusion, philanthropy, environmental work, and responsible sourcing. And each of these different tabs, gives more detail on what their specific actions are in that. And just this year, they made a commitment to donate $10 million to ongoing resources for advancing social justice, whatever that means specifically. In terms of doing social good, Target seems like they're doing a lot. And all their efforts appeal to customers in a successful way. This is evident in the way that they've developed a cult following. The internet is riddled with memes that show the retailer having funny sayings like, I like long romantic walks down Target aisle, or I never know how much is missing from my life until I go to Target. But this response is not just some coincidence, but it's the result of active and intentional branding efforts on Target's part. But the point that I'm trying to drive is that these efforts towards social good, however, are not because because Target cares about the community or diversity or eradicating racism in any way, rather because by looking like they care about the community, that positively impacts their brand and profitability. According to a study by Accenture, 63% of consumers prefer to buy goods and services from companies that stand for a shared purpose that reflects their beliefs and personal values. Additionally, 62% of consumers say their purchasing consideration is driven by a company's ethical values and authenticity. Target is aware of this. Sarah Benet Weiser tells us again, the logic of corporate social responsibility is about the various ways in which a corporation's support of social issues can build the corporation's brand and thus bring more revenue and profit. The attention to social issues is a value added. Saving the world can be profitable. So by releasing curated statements, integrating diversity into their brand, and donating money to a cause, consumers start to think of Target as a good company. But what is forgotten about is how much money Target is bringing in. So in 2019, Target made a total of $77 billion in revenue, and their CEO took home a salary of $18.9 million. The bottom line is Target is all about their bottom line. Target is just like any other corporation doing what corporations do, making money and figuring out more ways to make more money. Selling trending products, featuring fat Black women in their ads, donating to communities is just another public relations strategy that is clearly working for the company and allowing those at the top to take home a more than generous salary. While Target gets a lot of good press for their efforts, more attention needs to be paid to the systemically problematic ways Target and other retailers aid in racism and oppression of Black and brown people. In Race and Retail, Mia Bay and Anne Fabian tell us that although many Americans see consumption as a matter of individual preference in which anyone can buy anything they can afford to pay for, who we are shapes our experiences of the market. Patterns of racial, ethnic, and economic segregation shape American consumers' retail opportunities, experiences, and preferences in much of the same ways that they shape the demographic composition of our nation's housing project, ethnic enclaves, affluent suburbs, inner cities, neighborhoods, and gated communities. Race and identity are not innocuous concepts that leave us once we enter retail spaces. Rather, our identities shape our relation to retail corporations and in the context in which they function in our lives. And I think that this is especially important to consider when retail spaces like Target are often positioned as spaces for women or do work to appeal to women who make a majority of consumer decisions for their families. So as I stated earlier, exploitation of labor is a method that capitalism relies on in order to accumulate revenue. Labor is a major point of interest that we really need to consider when we look at Target. For example, in 2020, they pledged to increase their Black employment by 20%. However, they gave no information of what particular departments they intend to hire Black people into. According to their annual report, Black people make up 15% of leadership roles, while 46% make up sales and labor and service position. What this means is that there are more Black people in lower paying positions than in higher paying positions. This phenomenon is very common in retail. According to a think tank, Demos, Black and Latino retail workers are underrepresented in supervisory positions. Black workers make up 11% of the retail labor force, but just 6% of managers are Black or Latino. Black and Latino retail sales workers are overrepresented in cashier positions. These are the lowest paid positions in retail. In line with their positive public relation efforts, this year, Target reported that, well, last year, 2020, that they would be raising their minimum wage from $13 to $15. This is putting them well above the national mandate of $7.25. Again, this garnered them a huge amount of positive press for being one of the first corporations to take this step. However, some employees reported that after their wages were raised, their hours were cut, ultimately reducing employees' weekly earnings. One employee told CNN, "I got that dollar raise, but I'm getting $200 less in my paycheck. I have no idea how I'm going to pay rent or for food." Forcing employees into lower hours or just under full time in order to avoid offering benefits is a common tactic within retail to cut corners. This still gets them the amount of labor they need while saving money. According to Demos, Black and Latino retail workers are more likely to be employed part-time despite wanting full-time work. 1 in 5 Black retail workers are employed involuntarily part-time compared to less than 1 in 7 white workers. Exploitation of wages is how surplus value is accumulated. Additionally, among full-time retail salespersons, women earn just 68 cents for every dollar earned by a man performing the same job. Black women only make up 71% of what all men make, Hispanic women 62%, white women 82%, and Asian women 95%. Moreover, women in retail are often denied maternity leave, healthcare, the right to unionize, and protections from harassment and discrimination. This is often due to the fact that they're not offered full-time employment. According to the Center for Popular Democracy, women and people of color make up a majority of cashiers and other poorly paid positions in retail and barely get the opportunity to be in upper levels of management. In retail spaces, women hold more than 80% of cashier jobs, again, the lowest paid position. This is evident in looking at Target's 2019 diversity report. There are more women at the bottom than there are at the top. Moreover, women retail employees in lower level positions are doubly punished with erratic last minute schedules that wreak havoc on their lives. These schedules make it hard for women to find childcare. And then for those women who are unwilling or unable to miss time with their children, they are often deemed ineligible of promotions. So climbing to the top of the ladder is the only way to obtain stable hours in retail, but oftentimes women are unable to do so. So beyond just accumulating wealth through labor exploitation, corporations like Target increase profits through political endorsements that fund policies that aid them and through political maneuvers like tax breaks. For example, the same Lake Street Target located in Minneapolis was under fire following the looting incident because reports were released that they, in fact, made a $300,000 donation to the city in 2004 towards the installation of CCTV cameras. These technologies aid in the surveillance and disproportionate policing of Black people like George Floyd. And this is an example of a political donation that in turn gives Target a favorable reputation with city officials and police. Furthermore, according to local Minneapolis police reports, the downtown Target store and surrounding infrastructure were built with a taxpayer subsidy of $60 million. And in 2015, the city of Brooklyn Park pledged up to $22 million in tax breaks for Target headquarters, which is in Minneapolis. These types of tax breaks given to a company that's already bringing in $70 billion is problematic because those tax dollars could be given to Black and Brown communities in Minneapolis who need the funds for issues like education, welfare, improving housing. Corporations like Target operate with the end goal of making money. So when Target publishes messages like Target stands with Black families, communities, and team members, or that they're committed to using their resources to help heal and create lasting change, we must interrogate what exactly it means to stand with Black families. Commodity fetishism of the brand allows us to not think about the ways Target steals from Black and brown people collectively through underpayment, reduction of hours, keeping Black and brown people in low position, funding police brutality, and pilfering tax dollars. Commodity fetishism works to make us obsessed with this cute top that I bought from Target that I love because it actually comes in my size, 3X, while not actually thinking about what is lost in making this top and who is harmed. Brian Gunderson argues that capitalism is inherently and socially harmful, that ethical commodities derived from alternative markets cannot fundamentally counteract the pervasiveness and scale of ethical consumerism does not defetishize the commodity form, but acts as a new layer of commodity fetishism that masks the harms of capitalism by convincing society that the harms of capitalism can be rehabilitated with the commodity form itself. I know that's a lot of words, but basically what he's saying is that you cannot make a commodity good with the commodity itself. This concept of ethical commodities can be more broadly applied to corporations and retailers who feel that through doing corporate social responsibility or diversity efforts that they're somehow no longer part of the problem and harms of capitalism. I wish to apply these concepts to the way we think about Target. Though they do more good than some of its competitors, that does not make the retailer beyond critique. And by focusing on the good as opposed to critiquing the problematic, we can attempt to remove the harm that they do within the